the corruption of small d democracy, the corruption of human rights, the corruption of civil rights, the destruction, actually, of civil and human rights, the destruction of the public sphere, the deconstruction of government, or as Steve Bannon famously said, the deconstruction of the administrative state, which in other words is taking apart government. Trump came into office promising to destroy the United States government, or at least Steve Bannon was essentially saying that. We're going to deconstruct the administrative state. Okay, fine, you're going to take apart our government. And Trump is doing it. I mean, look at all the people who haven't been appointed to jobs, and the people who have been appointed to jobs are aggressively doing things like taking apart the EPA, taking apart the CDC. The woman who was running it was investing in tobacco stocks at the same time she was supposed to run the campaign to stop smoking. Maybe she decided to dial back the campaign. Hey, if I could dial back the campaign, I could buy JP or RJR or Laurel Art or whatever it is. So there's that. But the bigger issue is the one of privatization. And this is something that really started picking up steam under Ronald Reagan. Reagan fully embraced the idea that any job being done by a government bureaucrat could be done better by a corporate bureaucrat. So let's just replace all the government bureaucrats with corporate bureaucrats, right? And this, by the way, Reagan wasn't the first. Margaret Thatcher started this in 1978 in Great Britain and started outsourcing things, started privatizing, industries that were owned by the government, the rails, for example. Kimiko de Freitas Tumara, writing in the New York Times today, actually yesterday, the headline, "Britain was a pioneer in outsourcing services. Now the model is broken." And she starts out telling this story of a nursing home. It's called the Milbro Care Home. And it had been privatized years ago. And it's run by the second largest runner of company that runs these giant nursing homes in England, or in Britain. And she tells the story, the residents of the Milbro Care Home were already frail with old age and illness when they started losing weight at an alarming speed. The reason? They were being neglected. For over a year, they've been deprived of food and drink for hours on end. They were not being given the medication they had been prescribed. There were outbreaks of vomiting and diarrhea, outdated food in the kitchen. No one was in charge of preventing the spread of infections. Managers rarely made an appearance. The company that owns Milbro is Four Seasons Healthcare, Britain's second largest provider, and they're owned by Terra Firma, which is like one of Mitt Romney's companies. It's a private equity group. So they're not interested in caring for old people. They're interested in making a profit. Now, the story that Thatcher and Reagan told us that they got from Milton Friedman in the Chicago School back in the 50s and 60s was that because the marketplace is driven by greed and profit, it is always going to seek to maximize profits, which means reducing prices and costs to the bare minimum. So if you're aggressively reducing prices and costs to the bare minimum, then in theory you should be able to offer services cheaper than a government agency that is not quite so fanatically interested in reducing costs, but is more committed to providing high quality services. That was the theory, that private enterprise, because of the profit motive, would do it better. Now, the rest of us were standing around, and by the rest of us, I mean most rational economists from Paul Krugman, on down, were standing around, and Richard Wolff, who will be with us in the next hour of the program, we're standing around saying, hey, wait a minute. You're going to take a for-profit entity that wants to make 10 or 20% off this, plus has to pay the salaries of its CEOs and its marketing people, and it has to produce a dividend to give to its stockholders, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there's all this overhead associated with being a for-profit company that they're going to be able to provide the services cheaper. It's like, Medicare has run for years and years and years on less than 3% of total cost. There's not a health insurance company in the United States right now, for-profit health insurance company in the United States, that is even capable of running on less than 20% of cost. because they've got to pay the CEOs their multi-million-dollar salaries. They've got to pay all the executives. United Healthcare has over 100 of them who make over $1 million a year, if reports are true. They've got to pay these people and all this stuff, and after all, it's a for-profit business. So now we get to the bottom line here. This is from that New York Times story I was just sharing with you. A report by the government's National Audit Office, this would be the British government, shows that taxpayers are expected to pay nearly $285 billion to private contractors for projects and services over the next 25 years. The agency also found that with changing economics, schools could cost 40% more and hospitals 70% more when undertaken through private financed initiatives rather than through the government. You get that? The British government coming right out and saying, okay, here's our official assessment. If you're going to run a hospital for profit, it's going to cost you 70% more than if the government runs it. And you're probably going to get worse service, given what happened in the UK. And if you're going to run a school for profit, it's going to cost 40% more. Somebody needs to wake up Betsy DeVos.